Hey guys, this is Amber. I'm a mom of 11 kids, and 8 of our kids still live with us. 2 of our kids are going to Juilliard and they live in New York City, and one of our kids is married. He's in Pennsylvania and he's going to law school. But we still have quite a few kids living with us in our house. So today I thought I would talk to you about a pain point that I think we all experience as mothers because it's a constantly evolving pain point, and that is screen time. The reason I thought to talk about this was I watched a really interesting video. Well, it's actually a podcast, but I like watching podcasts, video podcasts, because I like just seeing the faces and seeing the interaction. And you can listen to podcasts, but it's fun to kind of hear and see who's talking. But the podcast is called Simple Farmhouse Life, and it's Lisa from Farmhouse on Boone, and she was talking to Ruth Ann Zimmerman. They're both homesteaders, but Ruth Ann Zimmerman was a former Mennonite, and so she's like kind of raised in the homesteading culture. So she's like, a super duper expert. But what I thought was so interesting about this video was how screen addiction changed motherhood and what to do about it. And the thing I found really interesting about it is that when we're talking about screen time, we're always talking about our kids. Like, our kids are trying to be on screens, our kids are on screens. But it's true that us as mothers, we have to be very cognizant of what's happening with us on screen. So I thought I would just give you a history of our family's screen evolvement. Just kind of, I'm sure some of this story will resonate with a lot of you, particularly if you had kids over a long range of time, how the screens have changed. How what you could expect and fear from a screen changed. So when Mark and I were married, it was the year 2000. We didn't want to have a TV in our home. So we had no TV. When we were first married, we had a TV, and we decided it just took away I was in college, Mark was in college. And so it took away this valuable little space of time that we had to spend with each other when we weren't in college. And we were both working. So coming home and let's watch. We didn't watch anything crazy. We would watch Antiques Roadshow on PBS or just stuff like that. And we just found that it was cutting into our valuable time together. And so we got rid of the TV. And then our first son was born. And I don't know, I guess my granny had a TV or somebody had a TV. They're like, oh, you want a TV, while you're getting used to having a new baby, you might want something while you're nursing. So we brought the TV back into our house, and the same thing happened. And it didn't really give me any more time, as far as nursing, it didn't really, I can read a book, I can, think, heaven forbid, you just sit there and think, right? But anyway, so we got rid of the TV again. But in the meantime, just out of necessity for existence, we had a computer. And for a while we didn't have any internet. And then we were like, well, we need the internet. You kind of needed the internet. My husband had just graduated from graphic design school. So it's we need the internet. And it was just one more expense. And we're like, why do we need this? But then just with your job, particularly if you're in digital arts, you have to be on the digital web. And so we got a computer. We had some different filters and so forth, just because let's face it, what's on the computer can be really, really bad. We didn't want our kids exposed to any of that and so forth. So there was various filters we tried throughout our married life. And one of them, I think, Safe Eyes. There were different filters we tried. And what's interesting was that basically all the filters we tried at the end of the line, they were just okay, the internet's too crazy, we can't even filter it, so we're going out of business, so here's your money back. That's what basically happened with all of the filters. So filters are forget about it. So eventually we ended up giving Covenant Eyes, and I really like that because it just monitors stuff. It doesn't filter anything out, it just monitors what's happening. And it's been particularly useful. Obviously you don't want your kids looking at the really bad stuff on the internet, but beyond that, it also catches if they snuck their computer up to their bedroom and playing Roblox at 3 a.m, Covenant Eyes will show you that at 3 something a.m, here's Roblox. Is it evil? No, hopefully not. But it's not what they're supposed to be doing at 3 a.m. They're supposed to be sleeping. So I love Covenant Eyes, and that has been a game changer as far as monitoring. But the thing is, that's what's changed is social media. Social media has changed a lot. So, of course, obviously, from the dawn of the internet, there was really bad stuff on there. But then there was like, Gap.com. Like, those were the two options, pretty much. There wasn't a lot of social interaction or like the doom scroll, the endless scroll, until much later. YouTube came around 2006, but I don't know if you remember, if you were a YouTube watcher in 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010, it was grainy, it was small, it was like, it took a long time to like, you'd watch a movie, and if your internet, I think we had dial-up internet then, most people did because the other stuff was so expensive, you had to buffer, and it was just like, it was not an enjoyable experience. It wasn't like just like, let me sit and watch this. No, it was very annoying and very slow for most people that couldn't afford cable internet. And then came the 2000, like between 2010 and 2020, that changed very quickly. Like everyone, basically cheap, fast internet was everywhere. And so like now you can watch YouTube videos and they're not, it's enjoyable. But during this time, neither Mark nor I had an iPhone because we were trying to save money, and that was expensive. Not only was the phone expensive, but the monthly expense of having that phone was just like, nope, not gonna do it. So we had no iPhones. Mark, I think, had a flip phone for his work. And then around 2014, his work was like, oh, you need to have an iPhone. So they actually gave him one, and they paid for his phone bill. So we're like, well, that's a no-brainer, right? So he got the iPhone, and they needed it because he was in the sign industry and had to take pictures of various things as he was out surveying a job site. He'd have to show them like, hey, this is what the sign looks like. This is what we need to fix on the sign. So he needed that accessibility of like a camera, send it, text it back to, headquarters, and they would look and change things or whatever. You needed that technology. I got my first iPhone in 2019, and I'm not sure why I did that. What happened before that, we had iPod touches, and I don't know, I don't think they make them anymore, but it was basically like a cell phone, but smaller, not as many bells and whistles, but it had all the accessibility as long as you were attached to Wi-Fi. I think that's part of why they stopped making them, was because they wanted you to not have that like small little device that you could just almost have, like the almost cell phone. I think that was like, hey, that's cutting into our phone purchasing, people aren't buying our phones. That's my suspicion. So anyway, the kids wanted to get iPod touches, and I was like, no big deal. That sounds like fine, And there were parental controls you could put on there, and so we tried to do that. But what ended up happening was, like, Elijah was really into Instagram. So I'm like, all the kids had Instagram on their phone, on their iPod Touch. And I didn't really realize this was 2015. So Instagram was a photo sharing app. And of course, there can be inappropriate photos, but my kids are into like dogs and this and that. But there came a point where I was like, they're always on this device. They're always looking at the dogs. They're always looking at all this stuff. And so I ended up taking Instagram off. In the parental controls, you could take off the apps. And so there was no Safari on there. And then I ended up taking off like Instagram and some of the other apps because it was just like they were always doing that. And my kids had they were so creative when they were little. Like Josiah and Pearl, there used to be just this sea of paper in the dining room because they were making the Eiffel Tower out of paper. Like, okay, it didn't actually look like the Eiffel Tower, but they thought it did, and that's all that matters. They would make an airplane out of paper. They made skyscrapers. They made armor. We used a lot of paper. I did recycle it though, but they used a lot of paper. There was like scissors and glue, and it was just crazy. But at the time, it was annoying that they were using all that paper and that they were just making a mess. To them, it was creativity. To me, as a mom, I was like, it's a mess. But it was so beautiful. And it was funny when that sort of went away because of all the iPod touches, I missed it. I missed the creativity that the kids previously had because they didn't have any other options. All we had was one computer. I had the password to it, and they had no digital availability until these iPod touches. So not too long after that, I took everything off, and I was like, okay, you can take photos, you can take videos, you can be creative, you can record your music. You can, I think I did have Apple Music on there so they could listen to their classical pieces that they had. But I just took all the apps off because I missed their creativity. And then what I liked about that was then they could be creative themselves. Like they could create, I don't have a problem with screens as long as they're being creative. They did a lot of GarageBand stuff. They did some stuff in iMovie. I like creativity. It's not like I'm against pixels on a screen. That's not so much the problem. The problem I have is with social media where it's just like, feed me. It's like the, TV 2.0. It's like, forget getting rid of the TV. That's like, everyone's gotten rid of their TV. So it was just so it was just such an abrupt, whoa, we gotta keep a damper on this because these kids have completely lost their creativity. So I took off all the apps, but kids are so smart. So I had Gmail app or even the ICR app, which is the Institute for Creation Research. So through these seemingly benign apps, they were able to get to the social media apps. Kids are so smart. So I ended up taking away the iPod touches and we just decided, you know what, we're just gonna have computers and we have a family iPad and you wanna do GarageBand, you wanna take some videos, we have the family iPad and you guys can take turns doing that. We decided to do that instead, but at the same time, this was right around the time of the pandemic and this was 2020 and our homeschool actually gave the kids each their own computer. I was like, well, it's a computer. We've got camera eyes on there. That's fine. But at the same time, they were able to find ways to get onto these social media apps through the computer, even though we had them blocked in the computer. And so what I ended up doing was I put a password. I think Naomi knows the password so she can log everyone in and I know the password and Mark knows the password. And besides that, we also have a lockbox. It's basically like a suitcase that locks and we just put all the devices in there. We're we're gonna have a device-free moment. That worked for a certain amount of time. And the thing is that the lockbox ended up breaking. We took a trip from New York City to San Diego and our lockbox didn't make it. So one of the things works and one of them doesn't work. Also, last year, Elijah bought Noah a gaming console. I forget what it's called. And then we have 2 Nintendo Switches, Switch Lite. I don't know what that means. I guess thankfully, the kids, we have tried to have there just be an hour of screen time 2 nights a week and then a movie night. That's our goal for screen time. But that doesn't always work out. But anyway, so the kids managed to the joystick doesn't work on Noah's device. The Nintendo Switch, they don't have enough data to play the games or whatever. So I'm like, phew, sorry. I don't know. I don't agree with everything he says or whatever, but Matt Walsh tells this funny story about how his kids all had iPads on a trip. For 7 hours, they were on a road trip. And so he let them have the iPad during the road trip. And then his kid, after the road trip, was he took away the iPad and his kid freaked out. And he's like, boop, he just stuck the iPad in the trash. And the kid instantly is like, oh. Of course, Matt Walsh has the financial ability to just, he said 6 months later he bought a new one and then, they were able to get back on there. But we don't have the financial ability to just be oh, it's in the trash. Okay, let's buy a new one. So we have to put it in the lockbox. But I do find that when kids, it's funny, you think the more you give kids, the more they're just gonna be okay, thanks, Mom. Thanks for that screen time. It's weird. It's like fentanyl. It's like heroin. It's the more you give them, the more they want. And I kind of learned that the hard way during our move. It just was we were so busy and so stressed out. And it's just it's so nice to have the digital babysitter. The kids, they don't really go on social media. They do YouTube. They like the YouTube shorts. They like Amazon Prime videos. They like Roblox, which I've heard there's some scary things on there. So I'm overseeing that a little more carefully. So there's things that they like to do, but I found that the more I let them do it, because I was just stressed out, needed to unpack or needed to clean something, or the worse things got. And the thing is when you turn off that screen, there's creativity's done. So I find that if I just really limit it, I'm it's from this time to this time, and then things are better. The only problem though is that our kids are homeschooled, and so what we have to do I don't have to, but let me explain how homeschool has evolved for us. when Josiah and Pearl were first in homeschool, everything was on a workbook. We did all workbooks, and I would correct their math every night. And this was like 3rd or 4th grade math. But I would very meticulously go through all of the math problems that Josiah had done, show him what was wrong, explain how he needed to fix it. 45 minutes later, I have it ready at his space at the table. So the next day he can correct the math and then do the next day's math. Same with Pearl. Of course, hers only took 15 minutes because she was like in 2nd grade. But there came a point where I had, all these kids, and that would be an 8-hour day, to do 8 kids, that there just aren't enough hours in the day to correct everyone's math by hand. And I don't want to just correct it and just be like, okay, move on. I want them, if they didn't get it, I want them to get it. Like, you need to go back and get it. So enter Alex Math, which is my absolute favorite math program. And it teaches the kids a math concept. It has them go through the math concept, and then if they don't get it, then it has them do it again. And they have a pie, and they get, different pie slices. So one is like geometry, one is algebra, depending on, obviously not algebra for 3rd grade, but although there are some algebra concepts, it's very systematic, it's very mathematical, it's exactly what you need for math, and it corrects their work. And if something's wrong, it's like basically what I was doing at the kitchen table for an hour, it does it immediately, and there's like, okay, you got this wrong, you're not understanding this concept. And then it's not just like you get it once and you're like, done. What happens is they have a knowledge check, and so they test the kids, and they're like, do you still remember this concept? If you don't still remember that concept, well, they're going to put it right back on your pie, and you get to learn it again. So I know that's probably annoying as a kid, but as a parent, it's just like, phew, that's why, my kids are doing as well as they are in math, even though they don't have hours and hours to correct math, is because the computer's correcting it. And obviously something like math works very well with the computers, because computers are math. It's like the combination of zeros and ones. It is math. Computers are math. So that works out really well for that subject especially. But here's the problem. So you have the tab up for Alex Math. The other tab can be like, oh, let me see if these jeans are on sale, or, my Anna and Chloe have turned into shoppers. I'm like, how many hours can you shop? You don't need to shop. You don't need to do all that shopping. But I'm like a non-shopper. I'm like, if it doesn't have a hole in it, yay, because that means I can wear it for another 4 years. I don't like shopping, but they do like shopping. So that's something that, just takes a long time. And I'm like, no, you need to stay, close that tab, or Noah will be like, I wonder what the pirates in 17, he'll have these things, and it's not that it's bad. I'm glad he's curious. I'm glad he wants to know what was happening with the pirates or whatever in 1700. But the problem is that we have this math problem to fix. And so that's the issue with computers, is that there's always a tab of something you can look at. And that it's an issue because you want kids to stay on task. So that's the thing. I mean, us as homeschoolers, the homeschooling crew back in the early 2000s, it's there was no, if you didn't have a TV, there was, no problem in your home, right? Particularly if you had really filtered internet or no internet at all, you were good to go. But now it's just it's like computers have become such a part of our learning. We can't just, Matt Walsham, we can't just stick him in the trash. We have to coexist with them. And so I guess that's the thing. I'm not coming at this as a homeschool mom that's figured it all out. I've come to the sad realization that there's not going to be some okay, I've got screen time all figured out and licked and we're good, because it's constantly evolving. The technology is constantly evolving. Those iPod touches that I found a way to completely take everything off of there. But somehow it was attached to my Apple ID, and so all the apps I had on my phone showed up on the iPad touches. And so I was like, okay, that's it. We're gone. No more iPod touches. So yeah, it's just the other thing I thought was interesting. This is why I made this video. So I think I said the title before, but how screen addiction changed motherhood and what to do about it. So it's Lisa and Ruth Ann talking about that. And one thing that they noted, and this was a huge change in 2020, was basically the arrival of 2019, 2020 was the arrival of TikTok. And what happened on TikTok, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. What happened on TikTok did not stay on TikTok. It really encouraged short form little bursts of POW media. And while that seems like, well, what's the big deal with that? It changed our attention spans. And it's like, oh, well, it didn't just change our, 12-year-old's attention span. It changed our attention spans. And I've gotten to the point, this is kind of like a confession and it's like embarrassing, but I've gotten to the point where if I log into TikTok or I go into Instagram, I start to get panicky inside. And that's kind of part of why I haven't been posting there as much. It fills me with such anxiety. And I used to really enjoy the scroll. And so much so, it'd be like, well, I was nursing, and be like, well, I'm nursing, right? So I can look at TikTok. And TikTok is kind of like a dog. You have to train it. And, I'll get, the Appalachian homesteaders, and I get all the cool mom content. But the funny thing about TikTok is that they're like, well, we know you like Appalachian homesteaders, but we're going to send you this really cool dance routine from these people in Paris. So it's funny, these things. And the problem is that, if you look at it for more than a couple seconds, then they're like, oh, you looked at that. You like that. So we're going to send you more of that. So kind of a constant fight of this ultra viral content trying to seep into your feed. And you may want to just look at slow feed, have slow content, which is better for your brain, I think. But, TikTok's they want you on that platform. They want to be able to sell to advertisers. They want you addicted. So they've got that algorithm figured out. So what happened in TikTok bled into Instagram. And so Instagram was very similar. And then also YouTube. But here's the thing about YouTube is there's a short shelf, and you can choose to look at a short and then click back. Or you can just look at a short and then you're back, and you're basically into the TikTok experience. My kids love YouTube shorts, by the way. And I don't have a problem with that, but in measured doses. So if you want to spend your screen time hour looking at YouTube shorts, great. But when it's math time, it's math time. That's the goal for me as far as a mom, is that we have things allocated into their boxes. So what I found was interesting about the Lisa and Ruth Ann podcast was they were talking about moms. It's not just our kids, it's moms. And I find that to be true. I find that I get really overwhelmed by the short form, just content. And it's really overstimulating, and you feel tired. After you've done nothing. You've literally just sat in a chair and looked at your screen, but you feel you need a nap after that, And so one thing that Ruth Ann said at the end of the podcast that I really appreciated was she's like, okay, the content that you're consuming, what is it doing to you? When you turn it off, are you inspired to get up and go do something for your home, take care of your kids, make a better meal? That kind of content, that's encouraging. But if you turn off your computer or turn off your phone and you just feel depleted and you don't feel energized to go do something, then that's probably not the best content. And even if it's not bad, it doesn't have to be evil. It's just, it can just be the cotton candy fluff in your brain. And so that's something that's really helped me. It's weird because being able to really love the short form TikTok experience, and then being I get fidgety. Sometimes somebody will send me a message on Instagram or something, and I'll just go on there real quick just to to check it and then get off there because it just stresses me out so much. I do want to post on there some more, but I'm trying to think of how do I not contribute to the problem, on that platform. I'd like to make content that makes you want to get up and make a meal when you're done or whatever. Just encouraging content, not just this. It just feels like sometimes the lowest common denominator is what rises to the top. There, it has to be really extreme. Here I'm on my private jet, and this is me in my fancy house, and or it's the other extreme. Okay, this is me, and I live by the side of the freeway, and in a tent. There's just these two extremes, and it's there's something in the middle that most of us live in, that the algorithm just seems to encourage the outlandishness. And that can be very draining on your brain, especially when you're a mom. I mean, let's face it, kids are kind of overstimulating as it is. So it's like adding that overstimulation is just a little bit much. So I do really enjoy slow content. I enjoy podcasts. I particularly enjoy, it's funny, I think it's Lisa that puts this out. It's a Simple Farmhouse Life podcast. And it's just her oftentimes talking to different moms. And I really enjoy this. What's funny about it is that she gets less views on this, but way more views on her, walking around the house content. And I like her walking around the house content too. It's gorgeous. It's so aesthetic. I think that's what it is. People are really into the aesthetics of like, look, she's, kneading the sourdough, things I'd love to do myself. But I find these just kind of like her talking to somebody. I can just put it on while I'm brushing my teeth or, doing exercise or making a meal. And I don't have to like be glued to the screen. I'm not like, I like seeing the faces, I like seeing the interaction, and like Ruth Ann said, I can turn it off and be excited about, what's going on in my home, because it's not, this the outlandish extreme of, I'm a bazillionaire. Oh, I've got nothing. It's like it's just normal people living normal lives. So yeah, I appreciate that. I am an evolving mother as far as screens go. My kids don't have phones. Okay, some of them do. So Josiah, Pearl, and Elijah have phones. Obviously, they're adults. They're doing their own thing. They're over 18. Naomi, I did get her a phone, but I did take off a majority of the apps. Right now she's in New York City, so Safari's on there because she needs it. But I like to try and keep her phone like a dumb phone so that she's not glued to it. And what I find interesting is that they say that the younger your kids are exposed to this kind of like hyper stimulation, the more ingrained it gets into them and the less they realize that it's a problem. So for instance, my older children, Josiah, Pearl, and Elijah, they didn't grow up with phones. Even when iPhones came out when they were really little, but we didn't have one because we're like, well, we're not going to spend money on that. For them, they realize it's a problem, I think. And so Elijah, a lot of times will be like, oh, did you see this thing on Instagram back when I was not so stressed out by it? And he'd be like, oh no, I deleted that off my phone. So he deletes it off his phone. You realize it's he's too addicted to it. And he's like, I just took it off. Pearl, what she did was she turned the colors of her phone. I don't know if it's still this way, but she turned the color. You can do this. She turned the colors of her phone to black and white. So everything in her phone is black and white so that social media would be less exciting. Josiah, he's working. He is a security guard. He has a wife. He's in law school full time. And it's at night school, but it's a 4-year program, so it's pretty much full time. And he also has I think a violin studio. So that right there will cure you of screen time because there's no time. So I'm grateful that my older kids, I think because they started so late in their screen time journey, they understand that this is not normal, because for most of their lives it wasn't normal. Mark and I too. I mean, the whole phone thing didn't come in until much later in our lives. My younger kids, that kind of was like Anna and Chloe had iPods at 5 and 6, or 6, more like 6 and 7, around that age. So that came in pretty early. Thankfully, I realized it was a problem and took it away pretty fast. But I am concerned that they realize what normal life is like, that normal life is not that, and that they need to experience life. They need to, make something. They need to create paper Eiffel Towers or whatever. I really long for that creativity. One thing I do let the kids do, even if it's not screen time, I let them mess around in GarageBand. I let them make music. I let them use the photo app. I let them edit videos, any of that, as long as it's creative, as long as we're not just consuming content. That's any time of the day you can do that, as long as you've done your math and so forth. But as far as the consuming of content, the playing of the video games, I am trying to keep it regulated, and it's a constant battle. This is not a once and done sort of situation, because technology is always changing. Who knows what's next? Eyeglasses that do everything, and I'm sure that would be hard to regulate. So I think our kids' minds and their creativity are under attack, and I don't think it's like some evil plot, these social media people are like, ha ha ha. I think really what it is is they just want to make money. They want to be able to pay their employees. They want to be able to, do healthcare for their employees. They want to be able to, have the snack bar at Google. I've seen the snack bar at Google. It's pretty impressive. So on all those things cost money. How do you pay for that? Well, you have to, sell ads. And so I do appreciate, particularly on YouTube, that's like slower content is appreciated because I like it. Because if it's appreciated, they'll make more of it. And so that's nice. It really, I don't feel panicky. I'll turn off something about, now the thing about Ruth Ann Zimmerman and Lisa is that they have, giant farms, and they're sort of like, here's our fresh milk, and look at, or we're not going to have to buy salsa this year because look how many tomatoes we got. Now I'm going to make sure that garden out there, at least by next summer, is going strong, and I'd like to make as much salsa as possible. But our kids are very, our kids eat a lot. So we got these berries at Costco, and we got a lot of them because they were only $2 for a pretty big box. And I was thinking, hey, we can make jam. And Mark's like, he looked at me, he's like, no, they're not going to last. They're gone today. We bought them on Sunday. Today is Tuesday. We ate all those berries as a family. So yeah, we go through things fast. So yeah, if we grow a lot of tomatoes, we probably will eat all of the tomatoes. Especially my papa grew the best tomatoes in that garden. He would sit there on a lawn chair and he would just bite into a tomato and put a little bit of salt on it. And I don't know if it's just that I was a kid, everything tastes better when you're a kid or what, but it was the most glorious, lovely. I cannot think of anything I would rather eat right now than that beautiful, juicy tomato with a little bit of salt on it, sitting in that lawn chair. Anyway, happy memories. But anyway, that's probably what's going to happen to most of our tomatoes. They probably won't turn into jarred pasta sauce. But it's still encouraging. It's still encouraging to see, women doing things, real women. One of the things about devices is that they help you keep in touch with your kids. So it's really nice for them to have a phone, but then there's all those problems and it's so impossible to regulate and so forth. So what do? As a family, we have other options. So one of our kids, Noah, he has a light phone. I really like it because it does not have any blue light. So if he wants to listen to podcasts or whatever at night, he's not experiencing that blue light keeping him awake. You can download podcasts on the light phone. You can call, you can text, you can listen to music. There are a lot of options on the light phone that I really like. So that is something you can have instead of one of those full bore cell phones. The other option that we have is I have bark watches for the younger kids. So Anna, Chloe, Enoch, and Melody each have a bark watch. With the bark watch, you can call, you can text, and there's also a way to know where everybody is. So that's a huge blessing because that's always scary, oh, are they here, are they there? It allows them to have some ability to go to the store or do some things as a group. I don't ever want any of them out by themselves, except for Noah, of course. It allows them to go as a group, and they all have it's almost like a walkie-talkie, and they can all communicate. And then I have the added nicety of knowing where they are. The other thing is, what do you do for entertainment? Well, I'll show you. So in the background, if you hear a story going, what you're probably hearing are these Yodo players, and I don't know if this one has any juice on it or whatever, but basically what you do is you can turn it on, and it has different cards, and there's, here we have Little Women, and they can listen to a story. You can listen to, let's see what else we've got. We've got Guardians of the Galaxy. We've got The Tale of Squirrel Nutkin. We've got Roald Dahl and the Twits. We've got The Terrible Twos. That's by Mac Barnett. That's really funny. And what else is cool is that they have almost reminds me of the old Light Brights. And so it has different chapters, and with each chapter, turn it down, it's kind of annoying. Sorry. With each chapter, there'll be actually a different kind of pixelated picture. So it's not screen time, but it's still really fun. So right now they're listening to Little Women. So that's nice entertainment. There's another option on here where you can play music. There's also a radio show for kids on there. My kids really enjoy that. A lot of times they'll listen to it as they're going to sleep. If you see Chloe doing dishes or something, she often has it, you can put a headphone jack in, she'll be listening to this. It also is like a nightlight, so it's kind of an all-encompassing, cool, screen-free thing. And obviously, there is an understanding out there that screens are, in fact, they're a problem for kids. And they are, capitalizing on that market of parents that are like, this screen is too much. So I'm glad. So like I said, it's a constantly evolving thing. I think there's going to be more and more understanding of what happens to kids that are constantly on screens as the kids that were constantly on screens grow up. And I think there's going to be more and more things like the Yoto player or like the light phone that help kids be able to live in this, or the Bark Watch, live in this world and still have the freedom and autonomy that having a device gives you, but without all of the moorings of social media and the doom scrolling and so forth. We all want our kids to have a healthy childhood. I was a kid in the 80s and 90s, and we rode our bikes and we rollerbladed and we did all these things. Like this block, this is my granny's old house, and this block was always like full of kids, mostly us and me and my cousins, but there were kids everywhere on bikes and rollerblades, and it just like now you don't really see that. Where are they? They're at home on Roblox, or they're at home, doing Minecraft, or I don't have a problem with any of those things, but just a child doesn't have the regulation, it seems, to be able to handle that. Us as adults can barely handle it. And a kid, their brain is still growing. Your brain grows until you're 25, which I remember hearing that when I was like 23 or 22. And I was like, wow, okay, my brain's still growing. But it's true, your brain still grows. And the thing about your brain is that even if, maybe it's done growing by 25, the brain still morphs as you grow older. For instance, there was a study that was done, put my Yodel player down. There was a study that was done in London, and they found that, so for instance, you cannot be a cab driver in London until you definitely are going to be over 16. I forget what age it is when you can be a cab driver, but it's after most of your brain has developed. And they found that a certain part of the brain that understands direction and so forth in these London cab drivers was very, very developed. So this is something that developed long after most of their brain had developed. So it's interesting that, we think, well, the kids, it's for the kids. But really us, our brains are still developing. There's still stuff you can do in there, even though we're, not as, spongy as the kids. There's still value there that if we, can turn off the screens, listen to a podcast. I like history. I like learning about cultures. It's not that screen time is so bad. We just need to choose wisely what we're watching, what our kids are watching. And I am grateful for slow content because that kind of jitteriness that TikTok always kind of instill. What's funny about me not being able to go on there without almost having a panic attack now is I think that was always there. It's just now I'm recognizing it. So that jittery kind of like caffeine high of being on there, I don't think that's a new thing. I think it's just a thing that my brain is like, okay, we've been there and we don't like it. Your brain does not like. So I've just been kind of concentrating more on slower content, consuming slower content that makes me, like Ruth Ann Zimmerman said, when you turn it off, you want to go bake a pie, you want to go do things. I'll tell you some of the people that really inspire me to do that. I really like Acre Homestead. I really like Sounds Like Rain, which I think their vlog is called Tiny Notes from Home. They're really inspiring about music and so forth. I really like Farmhouse on Boone. I really like Our Tribe of Many. There's a number of homesteaders that I kind of like come across my feed, and sometimes I watch their stuff, sometimes I'm not. But those are the ones that really I've really been enjoying Ruth Ann Zimmerman. Yes, I don't have a bazillion of acres to grow things, but it's still inspiring. I can't grow as many tomatoes as she can, but I can still, make a few jars of salsa, even if I'm not, filling up the pantry with it. So just be inspired. I'm not at all end all be all as far as screen time with kids. I have really good moments, and I have really moments where I'm just like, I just need the break of them being busy. I fail a lot, let's just put it that way. But I was going to show you at the end of this video my kids enjoying some screen-free time. And what's interesting is I'm going to show you, first I'll show you a clip of Naomi and Anna going to the bookstore, and we only have one car, so a lot of times our kids are taking public transportation, which seems like this, like, oh, how could they have to go on the bus? But what's funny is we lived in New York City, and everybody went on the bus because there was no parking. You could have a Lexus parked in front of your house, but it doesn't matter. You're not going to find a parking spot in Midtown, so why drive it? You take the subway, you take an Uber, Our kids are used to, now they take the trolley, they take the bus. There's a Pronto card here, which is so cool. It's free for kids that are under 18 and under. And so our kids get to go all these places for free with the Pronto card. You just have to apply online, and they're really enjoying that. So you're gonna see them go to the bookstore together and Naomi loves beautiful books. So not only does she love books that have a beautiful story, she likes it when they have a beautiful cover as well. In fact, she just bought a beautiful Bible. She bought this like King James Version Bible, but it's kind of like her other like reading books that she really likes, and it has like the gold edge, and it has kind of some filigree on the front. And I was like, Naomi, you already have a Bible. She's like, yes, but this one is beautiful. So she got that. And then also, I'll show you, my kids went to the zoo yesterday. More screen-free fun. I love seeing that. They went to the zoo with my cousin. My cousin's kind of like my sister. I'm an only child, so my cousin is kind of like having an auntie for my kids. And she and her mom brought the kids to the San Diego Zoo. It's free for kids in October, which is super cool because it's usually pretty expensive. I was thinking about maybe getting the kids zoo passes for Christmas. I'm not sure. Sometimes they have a deal. Like Disneyland will have a deal kind of on the off months if you're a local resident. So I'm not sure, maybe they would have a deal at the zoo. I'm not sure. So we'll see. That's a possibility. But I love them just getting out there and experiencing the world, like not on a screen. So be encouraged. Yes, screens are here to stay, but they don't have to rule our lives or our minds or our children's minds.
So right now we're waiting for the bus and we're gonna go to Barnes & Noble. I'm also arranging Across the Stars for Pearl and Elijah. Now we're waiting for the trolley. Kind of reminds me of New York. It kind of makes me sad, but I guess it's okay. We're on the trolley now. So we just got off, and the Barnes & Noble is like right there, so. Wow, look at all this. What? Is that real? Wait, this is a cool book. We already have one, but. We have one of those?
Well, Tales of Kenobi, is it the same?
I don't think it's. Is it?
Well, he's on.
I'll look at it. I'll look at it. Wait. Why is this so good? Oh, Boba Fett. Okay. This is what we settled on because I like Robin Hood, so I think King Arthur should be pretty good. And then Winnie the Pooh is just too cute, so you can't like not get it. So.
Este es un florero en línea verde con espinos.
You want to see it?
Can I pick you up?
Nana? Nana, they're right there.
It almost hit my hat. He probably likes my hat because it's so colorful.
Good job, Mo.
Love it.
This is a number for empty and sad because no one's in there.
Here we are.
Me too.
Safari.
Next 35 to 40 minutes. The hub over to the African hub. And you can see right over here to our immediate right is going to be our river hippopotamus. So you're going to notice some things right off the bat. You're going to see that she has really short but powerful. In the sun. And they try to cool themselves down that way, collect water a lot better. It keeps them a domesticated dromedary camel in the Middle East. But a
You can tell he's on his bull.
They're not that attractive from the backside.
For time.
Monkey a kissy?